I did not notice. You did not look like grandma.
I am a grandmother 4 times over, and I also graduated from Gispia, so that's a little outdated.
In her capacity as a county council person. She's a county council person at large, so that means if you live in Allegheny County, Bethany, how works for you. Bethany is even the second term of the county council because she can and she's more during her first term, she accomplished a lot. She created a civilian police review board. She then fragmented in county parks. She instituted monthly stipend for incarcerated individuals and no cost taxpayers. She also was involved in paid sick leave, increasing funding for community colleges, funding programs to prevent evictions, and also protected our LGBTQ community from racial therapy. Because there's more work to be done. There's more work to be done in terms of housing, for safe and fair pay, and she wants to make Allegheny County.
So yeah, that seems to be working.
So we're really grateful to have her here. And last but not least, we have Ms. Tanisha Long, who is, what you had at ALC? Community organizer at ALC, who also did a hell of a job organizing this as well and in partnership with us. We just give her a round of applause.
Right, exactly.
So with that, I just took,
we can brainstorm. I'll brainstorm after this is over, but yeah, I definitely trying to fix it with whole band-aid. So
and I say that being Baptist TK. We're gonna start with Bethany. This is our first question.
Yeah, you already know. I'll catch you.
We've heard a lot of talk recently about the conditions of the jail, right? As a member of the Jail Oversight Board and as a county council member, what do you think are some of the issues that you've identified personally, and what are some of the changes that you push for the oversight board? You can also feel free to talk about your experience as well.
Sure, I can talk about that for hours, but I know I probably have a time limit to get the answers.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll keep it.
We'll do when it's over, so we're
Put some wiggle room in there. Okay, so yeah, I serve on the Allegheny County Jail Oversight Board. I'm the first formerly incarcerated person to ever sit on that board. And you can tell, right? Because when you look around, you see how the board operates, the lack of actual oversight. It gets very frustrating, especially as someone who has been in the jail and who has seen the things that people are coming and testifying about month after month. Just yesterday, we were out knocking doors, and I got a call from somebody inside the jail who said that somebody had overdosed in intake. And so immediately, we hopped in the car, headed down to the jail for an unannounced visit to see what was going on. And the administration just makes it so difficult to know what's going on. They know that we are statutorily obligated board, right? We have a state statute that authorizes almost unfettered access of the jail oversight board to the Allegheny County Jail, and yet still we have one of the highest per capita death rates in the nation. So when you ask what's wrong with the jail, I mean, there's so many things. We can start with people coming into intake and not being immediately seen by medical. Someone who was able to overdose and now is sitting in a hospital who knows the status right now because they didn't have access to adequate medical treatment. Regular checks to make sure that people who are coming in off the streets are often coming from very vulnerable situations, very at-risk situations. That's the population that's coming into the jail. We have this unique opportunity to say, all right, you're here. How can we make sure you never end up here again? That when you leave this jail, you are safe and also able to thrive. What got you here in the first place? And when I'm going out and I'm talking to people, that's the number one thing is people don't know what's going on in jail. They don't know that in the past 3 years, 17 people have died in the jail. They don't know that people go without their prescription medication for sometimes weeks on end. They don't know that people are detoxing cold turkey on the floor of the jail, even when we know that there are medications out there to help people go through the withdrawal process with less harm to them. And it's because the people who are in charge who just don't care about people. Yet every single person in Allegheny County Jail, because we are spending more of our tax dollars on the Allegheny County Jail than almost anything else in this county, $100 million a year. Imagine what we could do to keep people out of jail if we invested even a fraction of that into the communities where the majority of these people are coming from. And that's what the underlying problem is. Yes, there are children in the Allegheny County Jail. The highest number I've ever seen, I believe, as of today, there's 31 children in the jail. So when you hear the stories about what's going on in the jail, I know all the panelists are going to talk about it tonight. Remember that we are talking about children as young as 14 who are in that jail, who are experiencing the same crappy food, the same lack of access to medical treatment, the same exorbitant costs to talk to their families, to buy commissary products, to buy hygiene items. Children are experiencing that too. And also people who have not yet been convicted of the crime, legally innocent people in this country. You're innocent until proven guilty, and yet 95% of the population in the Allegheny County Jail have not been convicted of a crime. And they're dying on our watch. The county is paying out millions of dollars in lawsuits. Grieving family members and friends are showing up to the jail oversight board meetings month after month, just asking for answers. And even I, as a jail board member, am shut out from those answers. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating to be at rallies and to be at these oversight meetings and to be at different actions about what's going on in the jail and look around and see no other elected officials. Maybe one, if we're lucky, who are talking about the deadliest facility in our county. And so parents and loved ones are also shouldering this burden. So it's super traumatic for the people who are in the jail, but also their loved ones at home who are supporting them. There are over 200 people incarcerated in the jail who are working full-time jobs, 7 days a week, at least 8 hours a day, doing laundry, preparing and serving food, cleaning the pod, doing basic maintenance. They make 0 cents an hour. And they don't get a day off. They don't get a sick day like we were able to pass and give to other people in Allegheny County. They don't get to say, oh, it's my birthday, can I maybe have 1 day of not working? They don't get to do that. And they're not paid for that labor. And so their family members who often at home are struggling with poverty or struggling with raising their other children or supporting themselves, paying rent, they're having to pay for the county to make a 69% commission on phone calls. For somebody to pay $3 for a pack of ramen noodles that you can get 20 of at the store for that price. So it's the entire communities that we're ripping apart, and that's why it's no surprise that we're seeing the cycle just continue. Because the jail is destroying families. The criminal legal system is destroying our communities. We can take a fraction of what we're spending on punishing people, make the conditions better for the people who are there, and invest in the communities on the outside. That's really the solution.
Thank you. So Liv, can you discuss solutions that you've pushed for on county council regarding ACJ? And what do you think is needed to go further in the reform process? If reform is the right word.
Well, yeah. Won't semantics, we'll just go with it. But yeah, we've been trying to do things around the jail since we've been on county council. And as you know, that was part of our platform, I'll say me. Personally, that was part of my platform, and I believe, and I feel like that has been the hardest portion of my platform to actually achieve. And to that, on the county council, we tried numerous things regarding the jail, especially in regards to when the pandemic started. We worked with the courts to decarcerate, we really pushed for that. We wanted to do testing in the jail to make sure that we knew the status of folks in the jail that did not pass. Oh, they made it to a vote. Okay. That didn't make it to a vote. We tried to do things around minimum wage. We've lifted residency requirements so that the folks working in the jail not have to live in Allegheny County because of the things that we've been hearing around shortages of staff. Of course, there's a number of positions, I'm sure Ms. Holland can tell us how many, are open right now in the jail. Hundreds of positions open. So making sure that we're getting those positions filled. And then in the connected, because as Ms. Bethany just alluded to or mentioned, is that there are juveniles in the jail at the moment. The highest that has been in there since we've been in office. And so we have, the county council have approved to develop a juvenile justice group just to help figure out what we're going to do with the juveniles that are currently in our jail. So I think that county council, we're making forward steps. Of course, our county council is comprised of 15 members, and probably about 6 of them, or maybe more, are not exactly, that was nice of me. Okay, are not exactly concerned with the lives of the folks in the county jail, so it is sometimes an uphill battle when we are trying to do things in jail. But I am encouraged that we are able to have this juvenile justice study group. We were able to finally visit Schumann. We were able to finally visit the jail earlier this year as well. We were, I think, 3 days from visiting the jail when the pandemic hit, and that was after we fought tooth and nail to make that happen, and then the pandemic hit, and then obviously the pandemic was the reason for it, not doing anything or doing everything, whatever way you would like to look at that. So, since that's occurred, we are now moving forward or beginning to move forward with being able to visit some of these facilities to see how they're actually operating and hopefully make the correct solutions to really care for the lives of everybody in our county, including our incarcerated population.
Thank you. This is a question for Manny. So, as a formerly incarcerated youth, can you talk a little bit more about your experiences at I'm told that the audio is unhearable. There we go. Inaudible. That's the correct English. There we go. As a formerly incarcerated youth, can you talk a little bit more about your experiences at ACJ and what do you think is needed to improve conditions for the 20+ kids currently incarcerated there? In the context, that's also as a result of sort of just the decision to close treatment.
Please, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Sound very soft. I'm going to try to speak up. Every time that I hear my Bible, I think there should be like a little violin playing in the background. I really think it's fun.
Was that?
But the reason that I put all that information in writing is because that informs my work today. All of my experience starting with one of my earliest memories was in a courtroom with my brother, who was also a juvenile. He was 16 when he got sentenced to 10 to 20. You know what I'm saying? And that was one of my earliest memories in life. You know what I mean? And my experience in the ACJ as a juvenile was my introduction to the criminal legal system. Now, I'm going to answer your question very abruptly. There is no way to actually improve the condition. They should be released on top. A jail that's built for adults is no place for children. For real, the jail is really no place for anybody. You know what I mean? If I had my way, that jail would be torn down. You know what I'm saying? And especially because, as Bethany pointed out, right, 95% of the people who are there have not been convicted. Right? So all the people who are sitting there are being punished before the courts or before the legal system actually determines whether or not they should be punished. And it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. You know what I mean? And I've said this a lot over the years. And I've heard judges, and I've heard cops, and I've heard lawyers try to justify pre-trial detention. There is no justification for it. You know what I'm saying? That's why, like, even in my bio, I make a point to say, yeah, I've been there. I've been arrested, incarcerated, bailed out, and acquitted 4 times. All right? Now, as the Constitution states, I'm actually innocent until proven guilty. I shouldn't have been there at all. You know what I'm saying? So, all right, I'll answer your other question. So, I was 16 years old. I was charged with armed robbery. Anytime they charged with robbery, they tackle a bunch of other charges. You know what I mean? Conspiracy, probably aggravated, so that was everything. Right? But because of the nature of the charge, because it was a gun involved, I was automatically charged as an adult. I think they call it direct file, also it was called Act 33 at the time. And when I went in at that time, I was housed with adults. You know what I'm saying? Everybody who wasn't juvenile was on that same file, but it was primarily adults on that. The only time I was separated from the adults was in intake, which is the most terrible part about it. For those who haven't been through it. We call it like a bullpen. It's really intake. When you initially get arrested, you sit downstairs and process you sometimes for 2 to 3 days. And it's extremely terrible. I won't go into too many details. But that was the only time that I was isolated. So when I finally made it upstairs, after I was stripped searched, after I was told by this dude, and this guy was bigger than I am now. People about 16. That's a lot bigger. And this guy, this guy was tall, and I remember this distinctly. This guy was tall, and he has a voice, and he told me to spread your cheeks. He told me to do a lot of other things as well. And without being too graphic, that is what people experience when they go through that situation. It's very humiliating. And it has had a traumatic effect on me. I've been to jail, as I would say, 3 other times after that. None of those other experiences stand out the way that my experience as a juvenile stands out. Even when I witnessed on the pod, the way the CEOs treated us, absolutely no type of care, absolutely no type of concern. I just stopped eating meat at the time. They didn't give me any special trade. I lost so much weight because I was getting meat again. You know what I mean? There was like a street fight. There was like a fight between 2 people. The CEO said, I'm going to get blood on the floor. That was their concern. It wasn't concerned about the people. It was concerned about cleaning up their blood. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying, overall, the jail is really no place for police, period. It's definitely no place for children who have like developing minds. You know what I mean? And to Bethany's point again, the fact that most of the people who are in jail are there without being convicted is a tragedy. And it should be taken back.
Thank you. Final question before we break and move to the next panel. This is for Tanisha. A lot of the work currently being done surrounding the abuses at the county jail are being led by activists and formerly incarcerated people. Can you describe what those efforts look like and how others can get involved?
So one of the things I want to say about this panel, the one that we currently have up here, a lot of the people on this panel have openly talked about their experiences with incarceration at the Allegheny County Jail, myself included. And the reason that's important, it's important to have people with those experiences on a panel like this, is because those are a lot of the people who are actively engaged in leading efforts against the Allegheny County Jail. And a lot of times when we talk about activism and allyship, we leave out the people who are experiencing or who have experienced the issues that we want to change. So in creating this panel, it was important to have that representation up here because a lot of the campaign against the Allegheny County Jail is not only led by, but inclusive of people who truly understand that jail from the inside. And I say that to say that unless you have been inside the Allegheny County Jail, these are just stories. They're stories about things you very much care about, or you wouldn't be here. They're stories about things that you hope you never have to imagine, that you hope your kids never have to go through. But they're actually lived experiences for some people. And I think it's important that the people with the lived experience lead those efforts. We currently are in a coalition with at least 30 other organizations leading efforts against the abuses at the Allegheny County Jail. We have demands such as firing Warden Harper. We have demands around making sure that incarcerated people are treated with dignity and respect, that their families are notified when something medically important happens to them, that kids aren't strip searched, that people of transgender identity are treated with dignity and respect and given gender affirming care, that people are given meals that actually are rid of roaches and feces. That's currently not happening. We have people who see a psychiatrist. We have people who can't see a doctor. We at the Abolitionist Law Center work on cases where people have lost their limbs or they've been, taken by correctional officers just for the point of it. And this is the type of stuff we see every day. So when we ask that greater question of how can I get involved, we need to go to the people on the ground. I'm always someone that people can reach out to. We have an active campaign against the Allegheny County Jail. We do work to elect people who advocate for people in the jail. This isn't a candidate forum, but county council at large, those are seats. County council and county council at large, those are seats that have effect on what's happening at the jail. Bethany sits on the jail oversight board because she's our county council at large member, and she was placed in that position. She's a formerly incarcerated person who advocates for people at the jail. This work doesn't always look clean. It's messy. It involves a lot of trauma and it's heavy. And sometimes you have to opt out of it for a little while and come back in. And you have to operate in your own capacity and do it in a way that honors who you are as a person in your spirit. Sometimes working on a jail campaign means you're someone who can just make calls and write letters. It means you're someone who can show up to our protest that we're having on the 13th. It means that you're someone who can put commissary on people's books. That you can join Manny and Leah outside the jail every Tuesday from 5 to 8 and provide things to people who have been newly released. It looks different and there are different ways to opt in, but it all starts by taking an interest and actually reaching out to the people who are doing the work. A lot of people walk up to me and they're like, I follow you on Twitter, which is bizarre to me, but I love it. But that also means that they're reading a message because I tweet about the jail a lot. There's a lot of unhinged tweets on there, but the jail makes its way into there quite often. And you can attend the jail oversight board meetings, and maybe you can help me live tweet them because that's when my fingers get tired. But you're actively engaging in a process that seeks to help incarcerate people until they're liberated and can do that advocacy for themselves. So when we talk about how to get involved and how to be engaged, there are many efforts, but it all starts with that conversation. So,
Thank you. And with that, I will hop off the stage and pass things on to for our next panel. Thank you again to Bethany Hallam, Liz Bennett, and Manny for your participation tonight. And I'm going to ask Ms. Tiffany Sizemore and Patrick Nightingale, as well with Laura, to come to the stage.
If you'd like to sit there, Simon, this is your stage, I'm just wondering. One of my joy.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me on stage here today. This portion of the program is dedicated to our courts. I'm with the Abolitionist Law Center. A lot of the work we do involves our courts, our court watch program, litigation, protecting the rights of people who go through our legal systems. And I'm very grateful for the panelists who have come here today. In lieu of doing the bios, I'm going to go to your questions and give you an opportunity to talk about the work you do yourself in the beginning of your questions, just so I feel like you can talk about you better than I can talk about you. I would also like to thank two of our panelists, Patrick Nightingale and Laura McWilliams, for coming in last minute for us. Trust me, when I say last minute, I mean they were ready. So much appreciation for that. And let's talk about our court system. And when I say court system, I don't just mean our criminal court systems. Our court systems are far-reaching, and we don't just have criminal court systems in Allegheny County, and they affect people in different ways. So we're going to jump into the questions. And we are actually going to start with Judge Tiffany Sizemore. So, Judge Sizemore, you currently serve on the Court of Common Pleas, juvenile court, correct? So, what diversionary options are currently available to our youth system entrants? Why are so many of our youth sitting in the ACJ now? And what are the systemic implications of this?
Okay, so thank you for having me. I do have a cold, so I apologize for any sniffling that goes on. But so I am a juvenile court judge on the Court of Common Pleas. I handle juvenile delinquency and juvenile dependency cases. And juvenile court is housed in the family court building. So we can see kids in juvenile delinquency court from age 10, which is when the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania starts charging children with crimes, all the way up through the age of 21, which is when juvenile court jurisdiction expires. We have 3 diversionary type programs. We don't have these specialty courts in juvenile court like mental health and drug court. We have 3 diversionary options. The first one is called informal adjustment. That is when a child is adjusted, their case is adjusted at the intake level, so they never make it to court to see a judge. They are meet with a probation officer. They can agree to a set of conditions of supervision. If they finish that successfully, then the case. The second level is what's called a continue to observe. So that means a child will actually come in front of the judge, and the child, their lawyer, and the prosecutor will agree to essentially put the case on hold. The child has to complete some conditions of supervision. If they do that, then the juvenile delinquency petition is withdrawn against the child, and the case is closed. And then the third, sort of most involved diversionary option in juvenile court is called a consent decree. This can be done with or without an admission, which is the juvenile court works with guilty plea to some or all of the charges. It's the same idea. The child, usually in Allegheny County, admits to some or all of the charges in the petition. They have a set of conditions they have to complete. Once they complete them, if they complete them successfully, the case is withdrawn. They have an opportunity at early expungement of their juvenile record. If they don't complete those conditions, then they're likely to end up with a delinquency adjudication, which is the juvenile word for conviction. So those are the three, basically versionary options, that we have. Beyond that, a child's case will look a lot like any adult case. There's charges, there's negotiations, there's pleas, or the child can go to trial, etc. With regards to young people to Allegheny County Jail, the ways that kids end up in the jail in the first instance, Manny talked a little bit about it, but Pennsylvania has a direct file law, which requires that some children charged with certain armed offenses and very serious offenses are initially processed as adults, that they are taken through the adult processing system, which includes adult arraignment, a bail hearing in front of the magistrate, just like any adult person. A magistrate will set an initial bond. That child, many times, is admitted to the jail, and then from there, the decision about whether to review that bond, reduce it, release that child, goes to a common pleas judge. So that's how kids end up in the jail. Frankly, is we have a bad, and I will say this because I was in the PA Juvenile Justice Task Force, and we voted strongly against PA's direct file law. So we have a bad direct file law in this state that really takes the discretion even out of the hands of the district attorney in the first instance when kids are charged with certain crimes. And then we have a bail system that many people have argued is broken and doesn't work. There's no requirement, I would say, just for the record, that kids go to the jail. Children can be placed at a juvenile detention center on the front end. They are not, even if they're a direct file as an adult, it's not required that they go to the jail. As probably most of the people in this room know, we don't have an open juvenile detention center in this county right now. But it's worth noting that even when it was open, we were not sending children to the charges adults to the juvenile detention center, we were sending them to the jail. And that is, again, a decision that is made by stakeholders. It is not the way it has to be. So if the direct file law is not done away with, it does not, and we get a juvenile detention center again in this county, it does not have to be that those children are at the jail. And I think the systemic implications of having children in the jail are many, right? Children, the things that Manny just discussed, there's no other situation in which we would tolerate a child being told by an adult to strip naked, to turn around, to spread their cheeks, to spread their genitals, and to be examined by an adult. That person will be charged probably with a sex crime in any other scenario. So, but we're allowing it to happen to children. And so you can imagine just the trauma of that in and of itself, aside from the trauma associated with adult incarceration. Now, children are supposed to be sight and sound separated, which wasn't the case during the time when they were 16 years old. There's a federal law now that requires children to be sight and sound separated from adults. There have been times in the past when that hasn't always happened in the jail. I don't know the current status of whether that's actually happening effectively or not. But obviously, all of the things that children do in their lives are interrupted when they're in the jail. They are usually withdrawn from school, unenrolled from school. They are not able to have meaningful contact with their families. They're not able to negotiate systems like commissary and other jail systems in the same way as effectively as adults would be. And as a result, we're traumatizing children in ways that are going to last for generations and that frankly come back to haunt us as a society. So in the short term, it's not good for the child. In the long term, it's not good for the community. And so, I believe it's Laura, who has my old job, well, not anymore, who used to have my old job at the CD's office running the juvenile division and other Manny and others who can tell the stories of the children who are at the jail right now, and the way that it affects them and their families, in both the short and long term. So.
It would be because of the night. Thank you, Judge Sizemore. And you had mentioned that we have alternative courts. And my next question is actually for Laura. And it's about our alternative court systems. Steve Hollow recently sent out a mailer touting the creation of 11 alternative courts for people with things such as mental health issues, veterans, substance abuse issues. What are some of the benefits of these courts and some of the potential drawbacks? And how can we make these courts more functional? And also, can you briefly explain how our courts can better meet the needs of residents who struggle with their mental health, with housing insecurity, and with substance abuse?
Sure. So I'm so glad to be here today, guys. I've been working at the Public Defender's Office for about 10 years. Most of that time has been in the juvenile system. We just recently returned to the adult system. My passion has always been working with kids. I'm happy to be here with you guys because we rely on the community so much. So this is what we do. Pretty much what's happening here. Because by the time we get someone, they've had a lot of chances to get help and they have been failed in a lot of ways. So the criminal system is a broken system that I'm a part of as a public defender. So we rely on all of you guys to help us out of the streets, out of the community. As far as the 11 alternative courts, I can't figure out what they are. Truly, I don't know. I can't count 11 alternative courts that I can think of. What I would say is that the justice system, the criminal system, if we're trying to use it as a way to help people, then we have already failed them because we have missed some chances in the community. And coming from the juvenile system, there's all of these ways to divert kids, to get them out, right? So there's all of these ways that we look at kids and we say, here's the problem, here's what we need to fix. And we're going to do it without getting them back there. We're going to do it so you can go on and live your life. Your job opportunities are not affected, your opportunities for college are not affected, your ability to get a license, to get housing, all of licensing, all of this stuff that we want people to do as productive citizens of society, we fail at that for the most part in the adult criminal system. And that's because for most of these alternative courts, you have to plead to something to get into them. There are a few diversionary systems in the adult system, those are created by statute. The courts that we have in Allegheny County, for the most part, while they are generally successful, many of them are successful, you have to leave them with a criminal record. And so that affects your ability to move on with your life. In an ideal world, we would have true diversion in the criminal system because being charged with a crime doesn't make you a bad person. It just means we need to rethink the supports that we offer people in the community. So if you think of the people who get into the alternative court system, we have Pride Court, which is for sex workers, which is the people who are charged in Pride Court are the women who get caught in the profession of sex work. It's not the men who take advantage of it. So you're talking about consenting adults engaging in a behavior that everyone is consenting to, but we are criminalizing one half of the consenting group, right? And you have to have that on your record in order to get into this court that's supposed to help you with the things that got you there to begin with. Usually that's addiction, sometimes it's mental health issues, sometimes it's other stuff. Same with drug court. So again, we're criminalizing the very possession of the thing you're addicted to, which in most situations we would offer help for. In this situation, we criminalize it, we give someone a record, and then we say, now here, we're going to fix this, we're going to help you with this, and then we're going to let you move on with your life. But your job opportunities are going to be limited. Your opportunities for moving on will be limited by the fact that you now have a criminal record. And so in an ideal world, we would have courts that actually offer help with true diversion, so they're not ending up with a criminal record. So they can go on with their lives and move down the path toward becoming a productive citizen. And anyone who knows anything about addiction and mental health issues knows that it's not as simple as someone telling you to get help. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of stumbles along the way. And for the courts to expect perfection from the very beginning is not fair to the people who are going to do it. It also takes away responsibility on the front end from the community. So if we thought about how do we want to help these individuals who are coming into our court system, why aren't we offering things like safe injection sites where help is offered, where people can live and survive until they're ready for actually getting the treatment that they need? Why aren't we talking about needle exchange? Why aren't we talking about providing greater opportunities for mental health in the community so people don't have to come into the criminal system, end up with a record, and leave with a record to get the help that they already needed before they came in? So why are we waiting? Why are we waiting so long? Why aren't we providing these services on the front end? We would save so much money, we would save so many people's lives, we would save so much trauma in the community, and we would help the citizens that we owe a responsibility to.
Thank you for that. I think you kind of killed it, so that should get your flowers for a little bit. Patrick, that's a hard act to follow. But we were talking about the issue of substance abuse. And in 2015, Pittsburgh decriminalized the possession of small amounts of marijuana. Yet people are still being incarcerated for possession of marijuana in small quantities in the city of Pittsburgh. Can you explain why this still happens and what changes we must make to prevent this? Also, can you speak on how this impacts incarceration rates, especially amongst Black Pittsburghers?
Yeah, certainly, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to appear and address our audience. My name is Patrick Nightingale. I'm a criminal defense attorney practicing here in southwestern Pennsylvania in state and federal courts, and I'm a former prosecutor, having been with the Allegheny County District Attorney's Office from 1996 until 2002, including the first 3 years of the current district attorney's term as district attorney. One thing that we always did in the district attorney's office, and it continues as a routine practice today, is someone who is charged with a small amount of marijuana. And we define that as 30 grams or less of flower, of dry leaf, or 8 grams or less of hashish. That person would always receive a summary offense. However, the issue is, why are they being charged with a misdemeanor offense to begin with if we already know we're going to be reducing it to a summary offense? And being charged with a misdemeanor offense, even one that does not result in your immediate arrest, still requires fingerprinting, still requires appearing in court, still in most of the circumstances requires either obtaining representation from the public defender's office or retaining private counsel, missing days of work to go to court. So the issue was, why are we even doing this if we are already, accepting that we are not going to prosecute these types of cases to conviction? What led to the decriminalization ordinance here in Pittsburgh was successful efforts by marijuana reform advocates in the city of Philadelphia. And what they did is they said, listen, Philadelphia has a home rule charter, and it allows Philadelphia to pass certain ordinances as long as they do not specifically conflict with state law. And the idea of a home rule charter is, if state law doesn't address an issue, then a city, a municipality is free to pass ordinances that will in fact address that issue. They successfully passed that in Philadelphia. So they started putting heat on me. It's like, why aren't you doing this in Pittsburgh? And we reached out to city council and had a lot of success because we were able to get the district attorney's office on board. Hey, we're already decriminalizing these things in the first place, so we don't really have that much of an opposition. We brought the city of Pittsburgh police on board, and the only, and this is something that is relevant to why we're still prosecuting people, the only thing officers would say to me is, Pat, I support this, I just don't want to lose my probable cause. If I'm pulling over that car in Homewood, in East Liberty, in Northview Heights, I still, if I smell that odor of marijuana, I still want to have the ability to search that vehicle. And in 2015, I was taking that. It was like, there's nothing that passing a decriminalization ordinance that will affect probable cause. But here's the issue. A decriminalization ordinance cannot supersede state law. We cannot force City of Pittsburgh police officers to utilize the decriminalization ordinance as opposed to charging possession of a small amount of marijuana. And when the ordinance was first passed, at the time, Assistant Chief Tom Stangrecki put a memo out to the zones that said officers may
use this ordinance. Not shall, but may use this ordinance. As a result, many officers said, I'm not doing it. Bill Peduto can't tell me what to do. And as we found, there was a lot of hostility between the Fraternal Order of Police and the mayor's office and police hierarchy. And thanks to Brandy Fisher and Alliance of Police Accountability, we were able to get some in-depth meetings, which my takeaway from it was the administration simply was not going to tweak the FOP by inserting the word shall. And instead, what we were told is allow us to change the culture. Allow us to start to train officers differently so that, younger officers coming on will be more inclined to utilize the decriminalization ordinance. And one thing I can say is that we have seen increased use of the decriminalization ordinance, but we still see people charged with a small amount of marijuana. And relative to one of the things that we talked about, probation supervision, if you're on probation and you get charged with a small amount of marijuana, there are certain judges in the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny County that will automatically and immediately place a detainer on you, lodge you in the Allegheny County Jail, even though they know that the charge will be reduced to a disorderly conduct when the case finally comes to a preliminary hearing. So that's just a little bit of the relevant backstory. And I'm confident that we are changing the culture within the city of Pittsburgh. However, the city of Pittsburgh is only 330,000 people out of the 1.1 million in the entire Allegheny County. So people are still being charged with small amounts and still suffering collateral consequences from those charges. Thank you.
But I would like to thank our panelists who sat on our court panel. We're going to do a quick little switch out, and then Ross will be up. But I want to give us a second to appreciate everyone who's out with us. And thank you.
Panel is about public safety. Okay, Bethany jumping the gun, great. Great, so without my introduction, welcome to the stage Bethany Hallam, Keena James, who is the organizer for the Alliance of Police Accountability, and Representative Sarah Enamorado, who allegedly is running for District Office right now, but she's not even talking about that, so yeah. Thanks so much for being here. My style is very different from Tanisha's, as you know. We're only 5 minutes behind, which is pretty good, so Bethany, I'm going to start with you. You openly discuss your recovery and use your story to advocate for people who are in recovery. And for those who are also in addiction, just generally speaking. A recent House vote sought to eliminate safe use facilities. Can you explain what these facilities are and how they help ensure, safe communities?
Yeah, as soon as that Senate vote came through, I was immediately calling my state reps, please make sure nothing happens with this. So the Pennsylvania Senate voted near unanimously. Actually, there were only, I think, 9 senators in the Pennsylvania Senate who voted not to ban safe injection sites, overdose prevention centers. So what these facilities are, they're life-saving centers. You come there, you can use there, you can be under supervision to make sure that you don't overdose. You can get help from medical professionals if you have abscesses or if you've been sharing needles and want to get tested for various things. If you need a social worker to help you get housing, someone to help you do a resume. It's kind of like a meet people where they're at. A lot of people do not have a safe place to use. A lot of people are using alone and they're dying. And our overdose rate is skyrocketing, even here in our own backyard. They've saved hundreds and hundreds of lives, reversed overdoses, and not a single person has ever died in an overdose prevention center. And yet our state legislators, people that we've worked our butts off to get elected, people who said that they were representative of the people and earned our votes, went to Harrisburg and voted against life-saving overdose prevention centers. And I was pissed off when I read about it, because I know how many times, I injected drugs with puddle water, how many times I was near an overdose, how many times I had to reverse overdoses of my friends, and how lucky I was that we were together when that was happening. That I had Narcan, that I had the ability to, one time put somebody on my lap and drove them to the nearest emergency room because we were getting high close by to the hospital and he was dying in my passenger seat. And it's really disappointing to know that we have the ability to make these overdose prevention centers commonplace. Especially, we hear a lot about people who are leaving jail and who received no sort of treatment for substance use disorder while they were in jail. Maybe if they were lucky, they got a couple 12-step meetings, but we all know that recovery is different for everybody. 12-step meetings, Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, those are great for people who work a program and it works for them. But there's a lot of people that doesn't work for. I am a product of that. I tried a lot to make a 12-step program work for me, and it didn't. But I was fortunate enough that I have resources and I had connections with folks who could support me in a different kind of recovery. And that's why I'm able to sit here today. After going to funerals for so many people that I care so much about, after going to jail visits now and seeing friends that I used with 10 years ago who are still in the grips of their addiction and they're in and out of the jail and they're losing relationships with their family and they're getting harmed every day. We know that we've tried the same thing over and over again and it hasn't worked. People are dying, the war on drugs has failed. It's time to try something different, and yet we need elected officials who have the courage to try, because that's really all it takes.
Thank you. Like you said, man, it's all it takes. It's a really simple choice, and it's choice that hasn't been made for the past many years. Sarah, as a state rep, you have spent a lot of time advocating for affordable housing and tenant protections, including the pretty landmark moratorium on rent in 2020. It was you and Summer. How is housing a public safety issue, and what work do you think needs to be done to increase, access to affordable housing in tandem with those changes?
Thank you for that.
So I focus on housing because it's so deeply intersectional and it's so connected to all of these different issues. Because when we're thinking about what is public safety is strong communities and investing in people.
Spaces that have been left out of the conversation for a long time. And what makes a strong community, right? It's good schools, it's access to opportunity, it's good paying jobs, it's great out of school time, it's excellent infrastructure, and it's housing. Because if you are a person in crisis, if you don't have safe, stable, and affordable housing, then it's going to be really hard to do everything else that you need to do in your life in order to be successful and engaged citizen, and to give back to others. So housing has really been a policy area that I have focused on in the State House. And it's really playing out here in our region. Market rents have nearly doubled over the last 10 years. We are tens of thousands of affordable housing units short. So we are not meeting the needs of the people here. And it has dire consequences. One, especially for our young people, because when you have a young person who's experiencing housing instability, they are more likely to interact with the juvenile justice system. And so now and oftentimes for like minor infractions, for loitering or sleeping on a bench or something like that, and instead of giving them the help and services that they need, we put them through a court system and create more barriers for them. So we need to think holistically about what does housing look like and how does it intersect with all of these different issues that we've been discussing throughout this evening. One is really looking at housing first models. So the county this past year has adopted what is called a housing first, which means that how do we put people in a stable place so that they can access the resources that they need. And that has manifested itself with the opening of the Second Avenue Commons, which is a low barrier shelter, which was filled in less than a day and is under-resourced and needs a lot more investment so that it's operating in a way that can actually service people. But that's just step one. You need to be able to move people from, beds and shelters into affordable housing units. And that's where we fall short, where we don't have enough of those units to move people from a shelter setting to an affordable housing center. So that is going to take it's going to take many different interventions to increase the supply of that. It's going to mean building more. It's going to mean looking at how you're subsidizing current market rates that exist. And it's just being creative in all of that. So it's looking at, how are we more efficiently using our voucher programs that exist in the housing authorities. The Allegheny County has 3 housing authorities: the city, the county, and McKeesport. And those, they're run very differently. And I sit on the board for the county housing authority, and there are programs, actually, if you have a housing choice voucher, where you can pay a mortgage with that. So you can actually connect people to home ownership and equity building opportunities. We are looking at how do we incentivize the creation of limited equity cooperatives. So not just building affordable housing with a tool that in 20 years is going to become market rate housing because we've gentrified a neighborhood, but we're allowing the residents to have ownership of the building, and it decreases the barrier to that equity building opportunity. Looking at things like the City of Bridges Community Land Trust, which again subsidizes affordable home ownership for folks. So there's a lot of really creative ideas that exist right here in the county that we could be focusing on and putting resources into. But yeah, it's housing. It's deep. There's a lot of pieces that are intersectional and things that we've worked on together at the state house level.
Thank you. This next question is for Kina. This is pretty recent. A lot of conversation has surrounded the hiring of the new police chief for the city and the retirement of Chief Schubert. Can you speak on what changes a new chief would need to make to improve community relations? And that's, I know, like a broad question, but I think you're going to address it. And how do we address the issue of over-policing in Black neighborhoods?
2 very loaded questions. There's 2 things that come to mind with what we need to see in a police chief is, first and foremost, accountability for their officers. And then I think second is transparency, right? When we're talking about accountability, like, there's no other job you can have in America where you can be violent, let alone fatally violent, and then actively get your job back. Like, it would not go down like that. We would be under the jail, and we know that. When it comes to transparency, basically police officers are allowed to do and say what they want to do. A lot of our judges basically go off of what police says. It normally doesn't matter what, I guess the defendant says. And that type of relationship causes a lot of our people to be incarcerated in the first place because our voices are not willing to be heard. Also, talking about transparency, when it comes to things like traffic stops, they don't even record why they pull us over. They also don't record brown people at all. Like, if you look at the data, it literally only says black and white. So if you're a brown individual, you're being recorded as a white individual. So a it looks like more white people are getting pulled over than black people, but that's actually not the truth or the case at all. For the, what was the second part again? Sorry.
What needs to be done in order to sort of curb policing in black communities? Very easy question.
I don't think we should have police at all, but I'm also a realist, right? And we know that's not going to happen tomorrow. So, I mean, the term "jump out boys" has been around for decades, and that just is, you know, slang for stop and frisk. I think you shouldn't be able to just jump out on civilians because you might think they look suspicious. You know, a lot of times that causes very violent situations. I don't think that our traffic stop legislation actually reflects why we get pulled over. It's actually crap. It's not strong enough. And I think if the police are going to work with city council or county council, then to create legislation that reflects what our community is impacted by, that even when the community is invited to the table, you need to take what they're saying seriously. Don't just try to look good by saying, oh, we passed minor traffic stop legislation that has zero to do with why black, brown, and poor people are actually being pulled over. I think, you know, we need less police vehicles in our communities and more, you know, conversations between communities and, you know, police officers. Again, I say that with in mind that I'd rather not have them there at all. But if we're talking about right now, you know, there just needs to be more conversations and a lot less violence. Like, you know, police always say that, you know, they fear for their lives when it comes to us, but they're the ones with the guns and the badges, right? They're the ones who start off violently with violent encounters. And as somebody who's been previously incarcerated at Allegheny County Jail, as someone who's been kettled in Mellon Park in 2020 when we complied to their every rule and was still shot with rubber bullet guns, still sprayed with pepper spray, still hit with tear gas, you know, I say it starts with them.
Related, can you discuss the efforts, you know, it was like the solitary confinement referendum that we worked together on in 2021, the Abolitionist Law referendum. Can you discuss, you know, like those efforts and other power voting efforts that you've been a part of?
Yeah. So I just want to say, the solitary confinement ban and Breonna Taylor, me and Ross shed a lot of tears. There was a lot of yelling.
Quarterback that shit. That's you know what I mean? So shout out to you.
Thanks, Ross. I appreciate that. Ross did a whole lot of the back end, all of the computer stuff. I was in the streets mostly. He did all of that. We spent countless numbers of hours talking to many different organizations, right? Because we wanted to go into those two laws being passed, bringing everybody from every community, right? Because we were very big on, you can't pass these kind of laws knowing that in some way, shape, or form they affect all races, all communities, and not have all races and all communities input. It took the effort of over 1,000 people, paid and unpaid. You know, Bethany here was on all the panels, like Bandits now, thank you. You know, it was honestly a huge community effort. And, you know, it's also what our APA coalition was built out of, what Tanisha brought up earlier. It has over 30 organizations and is still growing. And we still work together very closely on a regular basis all the time. We show up support and love one another. Sorry, y'all. Jeez. But it took a huge community effort. When people asked how we passed it, always tell people education. You know, they try to give you the bare minimum to work with, right? So we're running 2 referendums simultaneously at the same time. We needed 49,000 signatures in 49 days. That's 1,000 signatures per day. And man, it felt so good to slam 67,000 signatures on that desk. But that was just part 1 though, right? Because then we needed the county and the city to vote on it. But 80% of the county voted in favor to ban solitary confinement, and 70% of the county voted in favor to ban beyond the Taylor's law. Now, when it comes to the solitary confinement ban, it's severely restricted now. And anybody who's incarcerated in Allegheny County Jail is legally not allowed to be in their cell for more than 20 hours a day, meaning that they have to have at least 4 hours of right time or out time on a daily basis. There are 3 exceptions to the solitary confinement rule. The first one being a facility while lockdown, which the warden then has to report why they're being locked down and why they're being locked down for the amount of time they are, but they are still permitted to be out for 4 hours a day. The second is the warden. If the warden so chooses to put somebody in solitary confinement, the reason has to be documented. They're not allowed to be in there for more than 24 hours. And it has to be decided by the medical staff. It is not the warden's decision. And then the third is protective custody. So with protective custody, the person who's incarcerated has to sign a consent form and is not allowed to be in there for more than 72 hours unless they renew that consent form after that 72 hours. When it comes to, it also banned restraint chairs, shackles, and chemical agents such as pepper spray, tear gas, and mace and projectiles. And projectiles, so like no rubber bullet guns, no bean bags, no any of that stuff. I don't know if y'all know anything about the restraint chair, but they used to strap people into these chairs for 8 or more hours a day, not allow them to use the bathroom. They would defecate on themselves. They would have spit bags put over their head. And I mean, obviously, you know, that's severely traumatizing. Being in solitary confinement is also, you know, severely traumatizing for anybody who doesn't have any mental health problems, and also for people that do.
But then I know there's so many people at it, but like we are going to do to Q&A early.
I just want to tell people that the jail violates that solitary confinement ban every single day.
Oh, yeah.
Every single day. They have to report to us why they're using any of those exceptions. Almost every single time I go to the jail, it announces that the jail is on a facility-wide lockdown, and it's because they're short-staffed. It's not because there's any somebody's threatening anyone, any contraband, no reason. They are violating it every single day simply because they're pissed that we passed it.
Our panelists, this was our final panel. We're going to move into audience Q&A. These questions are not necessarily limited to the folks on stage, so actually we're going to review just real quick. If that's Scotia with our video crew, if that won't mess anything up. Bring more folks on stage. Okay, awesome. All right, so if Tiffany and Liz come on stage, I'm gonna take one of the mics.
We gotta get that done. That's the far left. That's the Margaret. I got it on the
Does anyone in the audience have any questions? All right, Beth. And if this is directed towards a particular panelist, let us know, okay?
Liv, I have a question for you. I know you're on the Allegheny County Public Safety Subcommittee. What direction would you like to see things go to replace the Human Center?
I mean, I could have yelled. I mean, I do that. I'm pretty loud. So yes, I do chair the committee on public safety for the county council. I would like to see a wraparound type of facility for juveniles. So for me, when I feel like juveniles, or when I see juveniles touch the system, they're touching other people, like family members, such as moms or cousins or aunties or grandma, right? Usually there is something that is environmental, if you will, that is kind of bringing them into the system. And if we're able to wrap around them by providing services to whoever the adult is in the house, services to the other siblings, and wrap around the family, and provide whatever that is that they need, that to me would be a much better use and if we will, for a juvenile facility. Also, I would like to see some concentration into transition, because a lot of many of the juveniles that are in or would be in treatment detention center aren't there for very long. I think the maximum stay was like 20 days or something like that. So you're not going to get a lot of traction, while that person's in there. However, if you do, the transition work, the wraparound, the follow-up, and all of those things, then we could probably reduce the recidivism in the juvenile justice, in our juvenile justice category issues, and making sure that those folks are really being cared for in a way that is restorative and rehabilitative and not compromised.
Thank you. You agree?
Thank you. This is informative, so my questions are short. But I just have one. It's for Bethany and maybe for Judge Sizemore, maybe for you.
We talked a lot about the role of judges and elected representatives, and a little bit about lawyers, and Bethany's studying to be a lawyer. I'm curious if there are efforts to educate lawyers about these issues and either bring them on board or hold them to account. Because in my short time in Allegheny County, I've seen the most shockingly racist, offensive behavior by lawyers that you probably all know in courts, despite the fact that we have these progressive judges elected. So what are you doing to bring the lawyers on board and get them up to speed on all of this?
I'll start with a little answer and then Allie, over to you. Because one of the things, we applied for, it feels like it was just Justice Center. We actually were awarded that grant along with nearly a dozen other jurisdictions throughout the country, and it was to address injustices in the fines and fees system. And so we were connected with a lot of people from different jurisdictions, district attorneys' offices, public defenders' offices, lawyers, judges, community activists from all over the country who were trying to figure out, like, how do we stop fines and fees from ruining people's lives? And so the controller's office at the time, it was Chelsea Wagner, and her office did an audit about how it actually costs Allegheny County more to collect the attempt of collecting these unpaid fines and fees than we ever actually get. So we knew immediately that the county wasn't even making revenue off of these fines and fees, nor should they be off of the people who can least afford to pay them. So we did more research and found out that actually Allegheny County is a second-class county. And the second-class county code actually allows for what's called a chief clerk to eliminate fines and fees in Allegheny County. Now the problem is that chief clerk is appointed by the county executive, who is not necessarily like super gung-ho about this issue, right? And so what we started doing is educating magisterial district justices, right? So people hear MDJs, you hear magistrates, I've heard a bunch of different titles for them, but basically, they are the first judge you see. They're the first line of defense in the criminal legal system. And in Allegheny County, we elect those judges. And so you may know a bunch of them that are running for office right now, they're 6-year terms. And that is really where we can address a lot of the injustices that happen in the criminal legal system, is getting them before they ever end up downtown, before they ever end up in big court, before have their lives torn apart. We can actually make sure that we have our elected judges who are fair and are just and are looking at the fact that, somebody told me once that if the punishment for a crime is a fine, it is only a crime for poor people, right? Because if you're rich, you don't care. You don't care about how much the fine is. You can keep doing it over and over again because money is not an option for you. And so what we did is we knew that, sure, it's one thing to help elect a lot of really awesome progressive magistrates who understand this, but there are a lot of MPJs who have been in office for a really long time and who are sitting on the bench every day and actually looking at how some of the more seasoned veterans are actually the ones who are assessing more fines and fees. They're the ones who are evicting more people. They're the ones who are revoking bond, not allowing bond, or even worse, assessing a cash bail. Which again, same situation. If you're a rich person and you get $1 million cash bail, it doesn't matter at all to that person who can afford to pay it. But a person from a lower income community who is already struggling paycheck to paycheck as it is, they get a $500 bond. How are they going to get out of jail? They're going to sit in jail. They're going to lose their job. They're going to lose their house. They are going to lose their kids. They're going to lose their car. They're going to lose everything. Just as we talked about earlier, to likely be released after losing everything and maybe even being found innocent at the end of the day, being acquitted, and you lost everything for nothing, for a crime that you were not guilty of. And so, in my experience, just having those conversations with these judges and saying, look at the statistics. You're not, helping anybody rehabilitate by assessing them a fine or a fee. All you're doing is putting them in a worse off situation that then puts them in a desperate situation that is when people are more likely to get involved in the criminal legal system, when they feel like there's no hope, when they feel like there's no support, when they don't know what to do and when they're desperate. So if we just help elect compassionate judges at all levels of the judicial branch, but also build relationships with the ones that we have now to make sure that they understand it's easy to be in that bubble and losing humanity when you've been in office for 10, 20, 30 years, as a lot of these judges have been. But I know that we've probably done a lot of the work of the training.
Yeah, so I don't do that. They don't let me train things. But in terms of the lawyers, bringing the lawyers along, I think it's hard for some lawyers to get on board with what needs to happen. And I'll let Laura talk a little bit because she trains all of the juvenile juvenile lawyers in Allegheny County. But I will say that one of the big things is pipelining the right people into law school. In my prior job, I was a law professor for 6 years, and that was something that local law schools really have to work on, right? We have to have more Latinos in law school, we have to have more people of color in law school, we have to have more people who have been touched by these systems in law school and practicing law. That's actually the way to change the profession in a meaningful way. And you can practice law if you have a record, you can practice law if you have, you don't have to have a school pass that you might say some profession. But I think Laura should talk about this because she does a lot for training.
This will be our final response.
Okay. So, yes, we need more lawyers of color, we need more lawyers who look like the people that are representing the courtroom, and that goes back to the fact that the criminal justice system is completely racist and completely broken. Setting that aside, when I walk into a courtroom, I'm very well aware that I don't. And so my job as someone who trains other attorneys in the office is to remember that. There's a concept called procedural justice, which is how the system feels to a person who's going through it. And that is more important than anything else that happens in the courtroom. It's more important than any sentence they might get. It's more important than what the judge says to them. What's most important is how the system feels to them. So they want to believe, they want their story to be heard. They want their story to be told the way they want it to be heard. And ideally, I'm going to help them tell their story in a way that gets a good result for their case, right? And so in the public defender's office, we're working really hard on remembering that. So our job is to always bring the humanity of the client, right? This isn't a number, this isn't a case, this is a human being standing next to me. He has a story, she has a life, she has a family, he has a history. This person might have a disability, all of these things that brought us here today. My job is to bring that to the front and hang on to that in the face of a system that wants to dehumanize the complex. We want this to be easy, right? The system wants these to be numbers, they want them to be files, they want them to be paper. When I turn them into a human being, I try to make their story heard and important in a way that they can then incorporate this really traumatic experience of being thrown into the criminal justice system into the narrative of their life. So ideally, I'm not an important person in the rest of their life, but the experience that they get from having been heard and having heard their story told in the right way will move them forward in the right way. So my job always as a public defender is to try to help them make the next step forward, get them past this really difficult situation in their life. Hopefully I never have to see them again. Hopefully that they go through the experience. But it's really hard, right? Like I don't come from the background that a lot of my friends do. I mean, I have my own life story, I have my own history. There's a lot of things that I can't relate to, so I have to listen. It's really hard to listen and ask questions and continue asking questions until I'm sure I can
That's right, you do those claps. Well and claps. I would like to say thank you to all the panelists we have here tonight. This has been really informative, and it is. So a lot of people who weren't here today are going to be taking time that you guys are able to get. And hopefully for the members of our audience, it helps shed some light on what is going on in our Allegheny County criminal legal system and why things are the way they are. Again, thank you so much to our panelists. My name is Tanisha, I'm with the Abolitionist Law Center.
My name is Ross, I'm with Power.
And you're out. Thank you.